Welcome, everyone. We're pleased that you've joined us this afternoon for our Tulane University Parent Programs webinar on supporting your student through academic planning and course registration. I'm Penny Wyatt. I'm the Director of Parent Programs here at Tulane, and I'll be moderating the webinar. As you see on the screen, our practice for these webinars is to keep participants' microphones and chat features turned off. Request that you hold your questions until we prompt you after the panelists have concluded their presentations, and use the Q&A button to submit your questions at that point. And then just remember that I will post the webinar PDF and recording link on the Parent Programs website in 2 to 3 business days. So I'll just begin this webinar tonight by explaining that this is the 3rd time that we've offered this particular topic. We started presenting this last spring before course registration, and then again in the summer for the parents of new students before they registered through CAST. And our plan is to offer this every subsequent semester to help parents understand how academic advising and course registration operate at Tulane, so that you'll have that background, and we'll also offer advice for parents on how to best support your student when they're going through that process. So I am happy to introduce tonight's panelists, my wonderful colleagues, Sarah Montez and Tamar Stark. And Sarah is the Executive Director for Academic Advising, and she's an Assistant Dean in Newcomb-Tulane College. And Tamar is a Senior Academic and Career Advisor within that operation as well. So I'm going to turn things over to them now, and I'll join you back at the Q&A session.
Good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to be with all of you. We appreciate you coming to this webinar. I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Tamar Stark, and I'll let her introduce herself. My name is Sarah Montez. I've been with the Newcomb-Tulane College team for about 13 and a half years at this point, and advised thousands and thousands of students over the years. And now I'm blessed to be leading this team. We are really excited to work with your students. They are amazing. And Tamar's going to be sharing a little bit about herself.
Hi, I'm Tamar Stark, and I have been at Tulane for 15 years now with Newcomb-Tulane College and advising for about 6 or 7 of those years. Also have worked with thousands of students and work closely with Sarah and the rest of the advisors in supporting our students.
So tonight we're going to, as Penny sort of explained, we're going to talk about a number of things related to course registration. We've customized today's presentation to this moment in the semester, which is this is a very, very hectic week for us in advising, and we'll explain why in a little bit. So Penny, you can advance to the next slide, and I think we've already done our intro, so we'll just dive in here. Tamar, you want to go over our objectives?
Yeah, so basically we want to give you an idea of what the advising landscape looks like at Tulane. We're going to talk about what registration time ticketing is and when your students will be registering, kind of what that looks like on their end. We'll give you some information about the advisor's role in helping your students register, and also the students' role and their responsibilities in their registration process. We would love to share some information about how we believe you can best support your students through this process. And we've got some reminders and resources, and then we're going to have time at the end for questions.
All right, so we can go to the next slide now. So our advising model at Tulane is one that is extremely supportive for students. Students are all assigned to an academic advisor, as I'm sure that you all are aware, basically from day one, as soon as we hit that matriculation date on May 1st. And we follow the students all 4 years in the academic advising office. But then what happens is organically throughout their 4 years, students sort of add and subtract additional advisors to support them in their journey in their particular place in the journey. So all students will gain at least one major advisor in the sophomore year when they officially declare their major. And there are typically a lot of students that declare more than one major. So you'll see students with multiple major advisors gaining advisors, as I said. We have a pre-professional advising team that supports our pre-law and pre-health professions applicants as well. And that team is available for all students within our office. Outside of the advising office and the advising official sort of role, we have fellowship advising, which is a relatively new offering at Tulane. We have many areas of career advising and career education at Tulane. We have success coaches as well, and peer mentors, as well as tutors. So a lot of support for your students. We think of it as just sort of a large array of professional advisors on the academic affairs side of the house. Tamara, do you have anything to add about that?
Just if you can go back to that one slide, Penny, thank you. That link at the bottom just gives some information about our kind of our advising philosophy. So it's a good website to check out.
Thanks.
Okay, next slide, please. Thanks.
Tamara,
So yeah, so I can go over kind of what our role of academic advising is, just broadly, not just related to this registration period, but as you can see, we do a lot with students. We help them with course selection, and that could be for their core curriculum requirements. It could be for major and minor courses. They will also be meeting with their major advisor to help them through that course selection process. We do academic planning with students as they decide on majors and decide on when they should be taking certain classes to fulfill the core curriculum requirements. We do, through the degree audit, we monitor degree requirements and their academic progress, and we teach students how to use the degree audit to be able, so that they can monitor their own progress as well. We do help them understand what major, minor, and other kinds of programs offer, so that they can make the best choice for them, including the interdisciplinary. We have a few interdisciplinary majors and programs. A lot of our students, as Sarah said, do double major, and we do have a lot of flexibility so that students can major between schools or cross schools. So they can have a major in liberal arts and a major in science and engineering, and we help them kind of understand how those programs may or may not connect to each other. We also do a lot of work with students in helping them understand the university policies and procedures, because they are complex. We help them kind of understand the nitty-gritty of all of that. We do work with students who are interested in taking classes outside of Tulane, maybe over the summers, or if they take a leave of absence and then return to Tulane. So we help them through the transfer credit process, and we do have a pre-approval process for transfer credit. We also help students if they do need to withdraw and take a leave of absence. That happens through our office. And the pre-professional planning and preparation, we do have that team of pre-professional advisors who can help them understand, what, if law school is right for them, if med school, so on, and they can help them through the timelines for applying for those programs.
So there's a lot of advising resources on our website. We always like to point out our website as being a really great tool for students. And there is a section there about parents, for parents and families as well. One of our most common questions that students have is, I don't know who my advisor is. There's lots of ways for a student to identify who their advisor is. And we have the advisors email their students on a regular basis. But if they don't know, there's a very easy way to find out. They can just call or email us. Our main email address is super easy. It's advising@tulane.edu, and our phone number is right there on the screen. Just wanted to point that out, and our website is, like I said, a great resource. All right, we'll go to the next slide.
You want to take that one?
Okay, I'll take this one. So I gave you a little bit of hot tip. There's a lot going on this week with our students. The academic calendar, the post-Hurricane Ida academic calendar pushed everything a little bit later in the semester. So midterm grades were due today to be submitted by the faculty. These are not recorded on the transcript, and faculty are strongly encouraged but not required to post these grades for their students. And students can review their midterm grades that are posted by their faculty in the Gibson portal, the student tab of the Gibson portal. They can review their grades sort of on assignments and more like day-to-day grades throughout the semester, typically in the Canvas portal as well. Academic advisors have access to the grades that are posted in Gibson, and that's what we use to monitor our students' sort of progress in their classes, and we kind of gauge whether or not there's any concerns. For students who earn at midterm anything in the D or F range, we're going to be sending out some concerted pointed outreach and support emails to those students and encouraging them to connect with us to essentially talk about their options and strategize around how to pull those grades up. Our research and data around that shows that students who connect with their advisor around low performance in a class, that intervention can be really, really powerful for them and connecting them to resources, to the point of, I think it was 78% of students that met with an advisor last semester were able to improve their midterm grades after a low grade was reported. So we do believe in the power of like connection and making good referrals to students and helping them strategize around their options. Two of their options that advisors are talking about this week, the deadline is this Friday. So we wanted to just point that out to y'all that October 29th is the last date for students to both withdraw from a class, and they can do that on their own in their Gibson portal through the system called the schedule of classes. They will have a W on their record, a withdrawal will be noted, and they have to remain in full-time credit hours, which is 12 credit hours. Typically, that's the equivalent of 4 classes. And so if your student has any questions about dropping classes, they can always see their advisor or the advisor of the day. We also have at Tulane the option for students to take 1 class total and 10 credits total throughout the time that they're a student at Tulane with the grade type of satisfactory, unsatisfactory. The rules on that are a little bit complex, and we do encourage students that are considering changing a class to SU, especially our first year students, to consult with someone before they elect to make that change, because there are certain classes you can do it for and others you can't, and have them satisfy requirements. So that is what's going on this week. And then we, on the next slide, Penny, Tamara, you want to go over this?
Sure, yeah. So for the rest of the semester, which is a long semester this year, these are just some key dates. So there's a whole week off for Thanksgiving, which is lovely. Classes resume on November 29th. So students are expected to come back and, keep meeting. And then in December, we have a couple of days kind of added on where the schedule changes a little bit. So December 20th, which is a Monday, that's when Friday or Thursday classes are going to meet. And then on that Tuesday, the 21st, is when Friday classes will meet. And then that's the last day of classes for the semester. There's not going to be a final exam period where there are no classes and students are just taking exams. So all final exams will be administered during scheduled class meetings this year in the semester only. And then faculty will need to submit grades by January 5th for all students. So Hurricane Ida changes to the calendar.
For those of you out of town, parents, which I know is probably most of you, I know that's really butting up right close to the holidays, but we'll get them home for the holidays, hopefully. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so why are you here? Probably to hear about this. So registration is around the corner. Our priority registration period begins on November 8th. And we will see most of our first year students registering between, I think, November 17th and 19th. So that's a Wednesday through a Friday. And we wanted to kind of go over how priority registration works at Tulane. It's pretty similar in terms of sort of the approach and the philosophy behind this process as CAST is, in that all students are given a specific time ticket based on their earned credit hours. And you can, your student can view their time ticket in the Gibson portal. As we mentioned, students must register for a minimum credit hours of 12, which is typically the equivalent of 4 classes, and up to 16 credits during priority registration. After priority registration and everybody's had a chance to register for their 16 credit limit, then the maximum credit raises up to 19. So that's just something to know about. We also like to mention about waitlists. So some students will opt to register for classes that are already full when their time ticket comes up. And in many cases, there's an alternate section for students to register for. When that's the case, we encourage students to go for that section that's at a different time, perhaps, or on different days, so that they can get into a class that they need to make progress in their degree. But in some instances, some students will choose to waitlist for 1 or 2 classes, and they're allowed to do that. What the way waitlists work is that students, when you waitlist for a class, if you move up to position, the top of the waitlist, position 0, you'll get the student will get an email, and they will be able to take an action, either go ahead and register for the class directly, or if for some reason they're no longer interested, they can just let that, I think it's a 48-hour period, expire, and then they will no longer be on the wait list anymore and won't have a place reserved for them if there's space in the class. So that's how waitlists work. So whenever a student is waitlisting for a class, one important key success tip is just to keep an eye on waitlists. On email, excuse me. And the academic calendar link is right there in the screen. That's always a really good place for students to check. Time for registration is always going to be listed there, like the priority registration period. All right, next slide, please.
Okay. So our role in registration, let's see, where do I start here? So we want to meet with every student, if possible, for a 30-minute appointment. And students can make an appointment using the Make an Appointment link on our website. When they go to that link, they can see up to 2 weeks of availability for their advisor. So if the advisor is full for those 2 weeks, the student should just log on or hit that link again the very next day and see, they should be able to get an appointment that next following day after those 2 weeks. If a student does want to meet with someone right away for a quick question, they can go to our calling it walk-in in quotes, because advisor of the day service, because it's virtual. So it's not an actual walk-in, but they can just go to that link and meet with an advisor for kind of a quick question right away. And that advisor might even be able to help them make an appointment to meet with their actual advisor if it's going to be a longer question. We will have limited email advising during this peak registration time during priority registration, because we're spending the majority of our time meeting with students. So just to let students know, there might be a little bit of a delay in their advisor getting back to them if they do email them, but hopefully within 48 hours. They can also, if they need to meet with someone right away, call advising, our phone number, or email advising@tulane.edu. So Sarah, do you want to take this pyramid?
I'll take the pyramid, absolutely. So
thanks.
I think one thing we kind of glossed over a little bit earlier in the presentation, my fault, I think, was to just sort of explain a little bit more about our role in the Newcomb-Tulane College Advising Office. And so this pyramid actually sort of explains a little bit about it. Our job is to monitor degree progress for our students, in particular around core curriculum completion, and overall progress in the degree, which typically equates to about 15 to 16 credit hours per semester to hit the 120 minimum for the degree at the end of their period. Another critical important role for the academic advisor in Newcomb-Tulane College is to help and support students in their major exploration, and to essentially launch them into their sort of inquiry with their faculty or major advisor in the various schools that students are pursuing interests in. When it comes down to actual registration advising, we take all of that, and I think of it sort of like a gumbo. We take all that information and we swirl it, and we recommend to students typically 4 to 6 classes, not 8, sorry, 4 to 6 classes. And we recommend those students to register for classes that meet their requirements, but also balance their lives a little bit. So as an example, if we have a student who's interested in a math major, we are not going to recommend that the student take 4 math classes in a semester to just get it all done at one time. It's sort of an extreme example. It comes from a true student story that went on to do a PhD in math. That's all he wanted to do was math. But that was not my recommendation as his advisor. It was his choice to go ahead and take a lot of classes all in one field, but that's typically not our recommendation, because we see a lot of students struggle when you have a lot of sort of classes that can be all sort of assessed similarly. For instance, if you have a lot of classes in the School of Science and Engineering all concurrently, then a lot of those classes might have 3 tests and a final that all fall on the same weeks of the semester, which can be really, really intense for students. So recommending balance, having some classes that do more assessments around writing and reading, and others with more of the testing based assessments can be helpful. So a balance can be good. We do recommend courses. We also really help to guide students around sort of how they can navigate course choices themselves, because course selection is very fluid for students during registration. And so we like to teach students how to actually find things for themselves, as opposed to just saying you should take this course that meets at this time with this professor. We're not going to typically say that. We're going to be much more teaching oriented around helping them learn how to navigate that on their own. The other thing that happens a lot with registration, I'm not sure that everybody knows this, but what we do is when we see our students around this time in preparation for their registration, we assure them that we're here to support them after registration as well. So a lot of students will register on their own in November, but then come back to us either in December or in January to have their schedules reviewed, make any kind of additional changes to that schedule, and with the advisor's support and guidance. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, you want to take that?
So yeah, this is a little bit about the student's role and what their responsibilities are. So first, they should know when their registration opens, and that's their time ticket, which when they log into Gibson, it will be right at the top of their Gibson portal. That's when the registration first opens for them. It will remain open from that time forward. So they should be ready to kind of, well, we'll get there. They should also make sure that they don't have any holds that will prevent them from registering when their time ticket opens. So that those might be accounts receivable holds or immunization record holds. And they should, work with the relevant offices, either the Student Health Center or with accounts receivable, to get those cleared before they register if possible. They should understand how to use the DegreeWorks audit, and the way that they can figure that out is by meeting with their advisor. And their DegreeWorks audit will help them plan basically for their classes for the next semesters. It will show them what requirements they will, need to complete, but also they can run what are called what if audits, that to see what classes might be required in certain majors or minors. They should work with their advisor to understand how to prepare their planners. And those are basically in the schedule of classes, they can create kind of schedules called planners, and they can create multiple planners so that they have backup courses in case when their registration time ticket opens, if a class is full, they have another option to slot into that into their schedule. They should, if they have an idea about what they may want to major in, or maybe if they've already declared a major, they should be definitely meeting with their major advisor to understand what, if they have a next sequence of courses they might need to take. They can also use the university catalog and the departmental websites to understand what those requirements are for different majors and minors. And then registering on time is important, but understanding that it's also just kind of the first chance they have to make a schedule. And if they need to, they can make changes to it. So being flexible with, times of courses, getting on a wait list or two if they need to, but having backup classes ready to go as well is important. Anything else?
All right, I think this is where we get to show you how this all works. So I think Penny's going to stop sharing her screen and I'm going to share mine. All right. So here we go. All right, so we just wanted to quickly point out that your students are all going to be able to get into their Gibson portal. Tamara pointed out one very important piece of the puzzle that often parents might need to help with, which is about holds. You can see how a student's portal looks like here, and if they have holds, it's pretty hard to miss. It's usually in red at the top of their screen here, and then they can click on the link and it will bring them to information that explains what the hold is. And then they can work with that office. Often for first year students, it is an immunization hold, missing maybe some documentation that the Student Health Center needs. And so we just like to point that out. In addition, those other tools that the advisor will teach your student how to use if they haven't already done that this semester is to the DegreeWorks audit here, which can help students understand their progress in their degree. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a peek at the audit, and then we're going to show you a little bit about registration. So the, or not, hold on a minute. Maybe we won't do that. Okay. It worked a little bit ago. Let's try one more time. Third time's a charm, perhaps, or not. Sorry, y'all. Okay. Let me go to, Tamara will pull up an audit. While she's doing that, I'm gonna just go to the scheduled classes, which is located right here on the under records section of the Student Services Gibson portal. And within the scheduled classes, you may have seen this if your students have showed it to you before, but there's a lot of ways for students to look at classes, and we can find those classes either by typing in the exact information about the course ID in that field there, or we can add them to the planner that way, or we can look for courses in a number of different ways, either through the subject area search or the curriculum requirements search. And so we might find that we need to take both a math class next semester and a social and behavioral science class, and your student will slowly build a schedule by doing adding classes to their planners. Once they have a planner, then they will click on register and add drop, and then they'll be able to register for classes through the portal. So that is a very brief demo of that, and we can perhaps field more questions about that. Tamara, do you have an audit up that you might be able to? No,
I think there is a technical difficulty right now.
with audits. Okay,
Yep.
no problem. Well, I can show you very quickly then on our website a model audit. Remember, I mentioned all the resources we have. Let's see, where is this?
Degree.
There it is, degree audit. So our degree works audit is, oh, here's the student instructions. Sorry, y'all. Let's go to the, nope, this one. Is that where I went? Yes, this is it. Yay. Okay. So your student will be able to find their audit on Gibson, like I said, and their audit is going to show them a little bit about their progress and degree. And it will contain things like a degree block that shows them exactly what the degree requirements are for that degree, a core block, a major block. Once they find, once they're getting ready for registration, you can search for specific classes based on what is still needed in your audit. Once you click on those specific classes, you can learn more about them here. You can also see whether or not they're going to be offered for this coming semester. So it's a very helpful tool. Another really fun and wonderful feature that students love is called the what if audit. And you can run a what if audit, supposing that the student comes in with a pre-registered interest in business, but is thinking, what if I wanted to major in studio art instead, for instance, they can run a what if audit to pull in those additional and maybe different interests. There's going to be no record of that on their degree, but they can just see, okay, if I did this degree or this program, what would my requirements look like? There's additional fancy features of this audit called Look Ahead that students can actually enter in a full course schedule if they want to, and it will show those as planned courses on the audit, potential courses and how they will fit into the student's degree progress, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information in this tutorial here, and students do tend to really find the audit very helpful. And I think we can get back to our slides now, Penny, and we'll be able to get to questions soon, hopefully. All right, next slide. All right, Tamara.
So yeah, we've kind of gone over all of this already, but we do encourage flexibility and the creation of multiple planners because we do have so much flexibility in our curriculum. There is plenty of time to adjust before the start of the semester. They're making their schedules in early to mid-November. The classes won't start until mid-January, so they have really 2 months to make adjustments if they need to. And even within the first 2 weeks of the semester, a student can make adjustments to their schedule. That's the drop add period, where they're able to go to their classes within the first week, 2 weeks, check them out, see if they're the right fit, and if not, make adjustments without any record of having been enrolled in a class that they then drop within those 2 weeks. Anything else, Sarah?
No, let's go to the next slide.
Next slide.
So one thing that we get a lot of questions, especially from parents about is, can my student develop a 4-year plan with their advisor? And we wanted to point out to y'all that there are 4-year plans for certain programs at Tulane. Our 3 engineering degrees that we offer, and as well as our architecture programs, we have both a 4-year and a 5-year program. The reason there are 4-year plans available for those programs is that they're very sequential, and it's very important for students to stay on track. By contrast, the vast majority of other majors at Tulane are extremely flexible, and students typically get to the point where they're ready to develop a semester by semester plan. sometimes in the first year for certain programs, but typically in the second year. And it's that at that point that students work with both their academic and their major advisors to develop their semester by semester plan to make sure they're graduating on time and hitting all their requirements on time. There's a lot of our majors where you can take any number of courses to satisfy a certain requirement. And so making a very strict plan precludes the student from developing flexibility around what they're going to be taking at a certain time, and it really helps promote their exploration. So that's the sort of the philosophy behind that. I have a lot of students that I've worked with over the years that really want and need a plan, a semester by semester plan, and we work with those students. Keep in mind though, during priority registration, these next 3 weeks, the advising office is going to be very hectic, and we're going to have most advisors having fully booked schedules. So this is not the greatest time to make those 4-year plans. This is time to talk about next semester, think about stuff in the short term, and then they can come back to their advisors and work in longer appointments and extended time to really build out a full plan. All right, next slide.
So as we do think about, the short term of the spring semester, we also do want to keep in mind that summer is kind of out there, and summer planning can be started now, or thinking about, what students might be doing over the summer. And there are plenty of opportunities for students to take classes over the summer, either at Tulane or through these various programs that we have links to here. So we have had a very robust summer school offering in past summers, and that will probably continue to be happening. I know that planning is happening now, and we're at the very beginning stages of planning for summer. So you can come back to that summer school website kind of over the next several months to see, what the plans are going to be. Students register if they do want to take classes at Tulane over the summer. They will register for those classes during priority registration for the summer and fall, which happens in April. So there's plenty of time to start thinking about that. Some other options for students are if they do want to have a study abroad experience, but maybe, in addition to a semester abroad or instead of a semester abroad, our Office of Study Abroad does offer many summer abroad programs that I think are usually about 4 weeks long or so. Some are 2 weeks, some are 4 weeks, they vary all over the world. And students usually can take 1 or 2 classes that are Tulane classes that they don't have to go through the transfer credit approval process for. And they might even count towards, a major or minor or a core curriculum requirement that they need to fulfill. We also, our Office of Center for Public Service offers some international programs as well, where a student can take a class and also satisfy one of the service learning requirements over the summer. Undergraduate research is another really great way for students to get experience and help them kind of move forward into a potential maybe graduate school program eventually, or into a career through research. So that Office of Academic Enrichment will have some opportunities that will be posted over the next couple of months as well. And then finally, students can take classes outside of Tulane and have those classes pre-approved to transfer back to Tulane. And the students should work with their academic advisor on understanding what schools are eligible. So basically any 4-year university or college, it can't be a 2-year community college. And they should be pre-approved before the student registers for those classes. And typically, like our summer school, probably within the next several months is when students will be able to start looking at those opportunities. Next slide.
So how can you support your students? Well, we know you do so much to support your students, and you've launched them into college, and congratulations to all of you and their success in getting this far. Our thoughts around how you can support your students are that the following. So basically, we think you can help your student remember that registration's around the corner and they should start thinking about it if they haven't already. Help them reflect a little bit about what classes they're currently taking that they enjoy and what they will excel in. A strengths-based approach is often a successful approach that our students use to select sort of their trajectory in college. Have conversations with your students about academic plans that require additional time or expense. So the previous slide was a really good example of sort of thinking about things in advance for summer, for instance, and you know, whether or not a summer school course is realistic for you and your student and your family and your sort of budget is something that I think is a family conversation. So that's definitely why a role that you play there. Referring them to our website to schedule an advising appointment. That's a very heavily used section of our website. The make an appointment link. The system is very easy for students to use and they can see the next 2 weeks of their advisor's availability online. Refer them to our advisor of the day service for urgent and quick questions, 10 to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. And please remind your students to be patient and flexible. Help your student manage their expectations. Encourage them to seek help from advisors when they feel stuck. Although we know that your students are very resourceful and hopefully they'll avoid being stuck. All right, next slide. So we went over a number of resources. Sorry, Tamara, go ahead.
Oh, nope, I was just going to say that.
So yeah, we have a bunch of resources here, some really good websites that you can point out to your students. One we didn't show you on the webinar tonight is the second to last one, the academic programs page. It's my personal favorite because I'm a curriculum nerd. But you'll see that there's all of our majors and minors are listed there for students to peruse. They can see the requirements easily. It's sort of an expanding menus for each major, and you can see lots of really interesting information and also including career information. So we'll go to the next slide. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Next week. Yeah. So you're probably wondering, well, how can my student learn more about how to go through this registration process? Well, we're offering these 2 registration tips and tricks workshops next week on Monday and Tuesday, I believe. Yeah, the first and the second. They've received, I believe, already some information about these websites because we've had about these workshops. We've had some students registering already. So they should check their email if they're interested. So they're gonna basically learn how to prepare for registration, and review how to search for classes, some tips on how to make a great schedule and how to build multiple planners. And then there will be plenty of time for questions and answers. And this is going to be led by a couple of academic advisors.
So if you have any questions, this is the time in our webinar where we're going to be able to take some of your questions. I see that there's at least been a couple in the chat. I'm sorry, in the Q&A, so feel free to take those. We also encourage you to take out your phones for a moment and take a picture of this or use your photo app to scan this QR code and then text your student to remind them to make an appointment with their advisor if they haven't already. That's going to be their appointment link. And so I saw a question about a really interesting question about career aptitude tests. So there are, we have essentially, it's called a Do What You Are career aptitude test that our career services team can administer for students. I think they can actually take it on their own. And that's a really great resource for students. We encourage students who are interested in exploring career pathways to both connect with their academic advisor, but also with a career services advisor. Those folks are in our same building with us in Mustafer Hall. We work really, really closely with that team. So students can work both with us, and we can help them think about major exploration, the connections between their academics and their strengths and values and career aptitudes. But if they are interested in sort of a career testing opportunity, that would be a career aptitude testing, that would probably mostly fall under career services.
Okay, so I'll start going through some of the questions and encourage parents to start typing those in. And so we'll try to get to as many of these as we can before our time ends. So there was a question that was answered, and I just want to ask both of you if you'll just clarify about when priority registration opens for the different class years and for current students and then incoming spring scholars too. So if you just
Sure. So spring scholars actually register next week, on November 1st through 5th. And any spring scholar, incoming spring scholar, should have gotten at least a couple different sort of communications about how to connect with their advisor for that appointment. We're using a different appointment link for those students because they're getting an hour-long first year student advising appointment. So make sure if you have any spring scholars, and we're so excited to welcome this next cohort of spring scholars, that you remind them to take a look at their email. They'll have an email from their assigned advisor with the appointment link in that email. And yes, spring scholars are welcome to attend the workshops, although there's another program that spring scholars have at their disposal for online. It's called CAST modules, CAST online modules. For everybody else, registration begins on November 8th for all of our continuing students, and it extends all the way through November 19th. Of our first year students, the only ones that will register on November 8th are our student athletes who have priority registration on November 8th so that they can get their schedules worked around their very, very complex travel and practice schedules. Everybody else will open later in the month of November with rolling in again based on earned credit hours. Most of our first year students will be grouped in the final days before Thanksgiving break, November 17th, 18th, and 19th.
And so one of our other questions was if you can review that process for summer classes again, if they're going to be elsewhere, not here at Tulane. I guess this means about transferring, taking classes elsewhere and then transferring the credits. So my understanding is that you were saying they should meet with an advisor with the information about that course they're considering and get it approved before they commit to it and register at the other school. Correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So students should definitely work with their advisor if they're thinking of taking classes elsewhere before they register for anything. We need to approve the school, and then the student will need to get the syllabus for the course that they're interested in and have that evaluated by the relevant Tulane department to be able to transfer back. So it's a bit of a process that the advisor walks the student through.
So another question is, could you recap again the differences between the roles of the academic advisor, the major advisor, and a pre-professional advisor?
Sure. So the academic advisor are the advisors in our office in Mustafer Hall. They are, all academic advisors are assigned to all students. So every single student has an academic advisor in our office. Typically, that person will stay with the student for the first year, and we often reassign and rebalance caseloads after the first year just to make sure that our advisor assignments are equitable across the board and all students have access to their advisor. We sometimes will have a student stay with the same advisor year over year in our office. When they add a major, they will gain a major advisor. In some cases, that's a faculty member in the major, and in other cases, it's a professional staff member in a school. And the major advisor will be their point person for questions around major sequencing and major coursework experiences and opportunities within that field, and so on and so forth. Typically, students, once they've declared a major, they'll see their academic advisor and their major advisor once a semester or so, whereas prior to declaration, they'll see their academic advisor typically 2 times a semester. And then the pre-professional advisor is available to all students. We have a team that supports both pre-law and pre-health advisors. It is not mandatory at all for students to see the pre-professional advisor. It's an additional service that students can opt into if they're considering a law or a health profession. And they will support students, particularly in the sophomore, junior year when they're getting ready for application time for law school or medical school or PA school or whatever it might be.
So here's a question, and please clarify if we're not on the right track with answering this question. Does being on a 4-year planning path help at all with class availability? I wasn't quite sure what that one, we might need some clarification from the person who asked that question, just to elaborate a little bit more on what that means. So I'll go on to something different and maybe that person will resubmit the question. Do honor students register early? Or are they assigned within their cohort of how many course credits they have earned?
Yeah, so their time ticket will be based on how many earned credits they have.
And it starts with the seniors who have the most course
Right.
credits. Goes down through there. Another question is, if your student doesn't seem to jive with their assigned advisor, is there a chance they would change, or could they change? What do you recommend in that case?
Sure, and we understand that happens. We have a big team of advisors. Occasionally, it's not a great match made in heaven, and we encourage students to advocate for themselves by emailing advising@tulane.edu to request to have a conversation about potentially changing their major or changing their advisor.
So here's somebody who's trying to clarify that other question. Is a 4-year program student, does a 4-year program student have priority for the classes required for that program?
Right. So great question. I see what that means. No, but it works out. So if a student, for some reason or another, there's just tightness and the schedule won't work out in an engineering curriculum, and that's a really good example. We encourage that student to work with their advisor and also the major to navigate that issue, and we will iron out that issue by basically working with the school in question, in this case engineering, to open up some seats for the student in question in classes that they need to continue to make good progress in their degree. So it will work out.
And I would just like to say that to parents, this is why your student needs to cultivate their relationship with their academic advisor and know that that is somebody they can reach out to when they feel like they get stuck. We don't want to leave them in some spot where they feel stuck and that there aren't options. And so they can talk with their academic advisor and explain that, and they can get some help with those situations. So please steer them back to these wonderful people who are their guides and supports to help them through this process. So another question was, do waitlists open after classes start? For example, when someone drops a class, is a student on the wait list given the opportunity to enroll even after classes have begun?
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I'm
was-
pretty sure. Yeah, they drop after the first week, I think, typically. Is that right? Completely?
So it's, yeah, I think they're frozen right before the semester begins. So a student who's on a wait list will remain on the wait list as long as they don't take themselves off, but no one will be able to add themselves to the wait list at that point. And then I think it's within the first week of the semester. Yes, as students drop the class, the wait list will move up. And then eventually the wait lists go away.
Because the time for adding classes ends also about 2 weeks into the semester.
Mhm.
Is that
Yep.
right? You usually wouldn't want somebody to add something that far into the semester. They will have missed too much content to really catch up and be productive in the class. So there's a little window there when there might be some movement that first week or two. Let's see. So see if there are any new questions. If you're in a business fraternity, do they have a paraprofessional? Oh, someone is saying, if you are in a business fraternity, do they have a paraprofessional advisor that helps you like the law fraternity has?
We don't have a peer-to-peer advising model currently at Tulane. I think that's sort of what that's referring to. There's a lot of that happening sort of organically among the students. And in some majors, you'll see majors that have students that sort of provide guidance to students, but we don't have that formally at Tulane.
Would you want to mention the undergraduate business program office and what they do to
Sure.
just provide support for students in that
Yeah.
field?
Yeah, we have a number of business students at Tulane, and the Business School Office of Undergraduate Education has a team of professional advisors that support business students, particularly business students who are in their second year through the end of their time at Tulane, in helping them sequence their major coursework in business. And so that's not often a very utilized or available resource for first year students. We usually work with the business students in the first semester of advising, but they're a great resource moving forward. They also have a robust career services team in the business school that helps business students in the career area as well.
So any other questions at this point? We'll probably start to wrap up soon unless we see some new questions. I would just like to mention or even ask, raise your hand, use that little icon on your screen. If you are planning to attend our Wave 21 weekend, which is our combined homecoming reunion family weekend. So I see some people raising their hands. That's great to know. So I'll just mention that there's some opportunities that you may want to take advantage of. There will be a presentation on study abroad in the late afternoon on Friday, and it's about considering study abroad and managing expectations in this time of COVID-19. So that one could be really helpful if that's on your students' radar. And these presentations are planned for parents because students have their regular class schedule on Friday. But if your student is out of class by that time, they could come along with you to that program. And then there will also be a program about the summer business minor. And so our business school has a program where a student can complete a whole minor in business with one intense summer. So they're going to have an info session about that. And then the different academic school deans will be having different events that they're hosting, from some that are just more of a social kind of drop-in coffee Q&A to give you a chance to meet the dean and faculty members from that school, to ones that are more like a formal talk about their field and other interdisciplinary centers. We'll also have some open houses and chances to interact with them. So that can be a really good way for you to learn more about what Tulane offers in terms of academic opportunities for your student and how they might craft their academic path while they're here, or plot that path. So consider those options if you're coming for family weekend, and that schedule is at homecoming.tulane.edu. In the top right corner, you'll see a link for schedule, and you can search by day for those different events. And most of the programs that I just mentioned are being held on Friday. So Tamara and Sarah, do you have any last thoughts that you want to share? Or let me go to this next slide. We've got your QR code if you want to explain what this is about.
Yeah, so we would just love to get your feedback about today's session. So if you can scan this quickly, I promise you it will take you 1 minute to fill out this survey. It's very brief. We'd love your feedback, and so we can make this presentation more informative and better next time. So thank you very much for being here.
So if you have further questions in this topic, then please email advising@tulane.edu. And please fill out the survey. That would be really helpful to our panelists. And if you have general feedback about the webinar series or suggestions for topics for us to offer in the future, you're very welcome to email me, and you can just send that to parents@tulane.edu. So we appreciate your taking the time to participate with us tonight, and we value your support of your student always. So thank you very much, and have a lovely evening.